Welcome to Elmswick & Oak Woodworks. Today I'm installing Saw Stop's router table on the right side of my 36-inch professional cabinet saw. Your install may vary depending on your particular model, so just make sure you do your research prior to ordering and installing anything. So what you see me doing here is I'm removing the wooden insert, but it's important to note that you'll actually need to remove the fence rail in order to get the hex bolts that hold that wooden insert in place out. And here in just a moment, you'll see me realize that the fence rail is in the way, and you kind of got to pivot a little bit to get it out. But it's not really that big of a deal. If you realize late, you just need to remove the fence and then the fence rail, and it make for an easier install as well. You are actually able to reuse these legs on the router table. So rather than buy the kit, you might be able to save a little bit of money by reusing them. The first step of the actual install is this intermediate cast iron wing. Depending on your install, this may not be necessary, like if you're installing on the left rather than like I am on the right. Just wiping off the excess oil here. Prior to the install. If you installed these on your saw, then you know what a pain they can be to get perfect. No real tricks here, but I did find that getting all the bolts just barely tight and then using your hand mallet or rubber mallet to tap them into level, tightening little bit by little bit as you go. This takes time, and having a second pair of hands should make the process a bit easier. Just check and recheck level and you should be fine. Another important note here on this is just to make sure you have all your nuts, bolts, washers, lock washers within arm's reach. If you're doing this on your own, you're likely going to be holding it in place with one arm, and if you don't have that stuff nearby, you're going to have to stop and go grab it. So just make sure you have it all queued up, ready to go, and you'll be good to go. much here to really talk about. Installing the router table itself, again, wiping off the excess oil that it ships with, and then we'll be installing the legs onto the underside, as well as the screws that will actually hold up the router lift itself and level it all out. The process is very similar to pretty much exact to how the intermediate cast iron wing goes on. So I'll just leave this here so you can kind of see the process. So these are those leveling screws that I talked about. I guess they're bolts, but they come with nuts on them, and then you tighten those nuts down. You want them sticking out about a 1/4 inch out the top side, and then those nuts get tightened down to obviously help prevent them from backing back out. But I kind of messed up here, and I wasn't too concerned about having this tight, and then had a heck of a time once you have the actual router lift in place, getting those tightened back down. So I would say that probably the best thing to do is get those sticking out the top about a 1/4 inch, lock them right down, and then you can adjust those with a screwdriver later on. It's going to make it a lot easier for you. So now, working on getting those legs installed, you see that each one of them has 2 actual holes where they're actually bolt in. So this is really pretty straightforward. I wish there was a little more room to get your fingers in there. I have really large hands, so it can be kind of a pain, but this is very straightforward. Lock them in place. Probably the easiest part of the entire build. So now that we've got that router table installed and leveled out, I'm going to be reinstalling the fence rail. So what I'm doing here is just putting a little paste wax on to act as a little protectant, and then also just to help kind of smooth up that surface for the fence to slide on. Getting the fence for the router table assembled here. Nothing particularly difficult about any of this. Just follow the instructions and you'll be fine. Moving on now to the router lift. A couple of really important notes here is that I didn't realize until the actual assembly that I needed brake clean and dry lubricant. I didn't have those in my shop at the time, so I had to stop what I was doing and actually go out and grab those things. So the solvent that I use, obviously just brake clean, and then a dry lubricant. I just went with a general WD-40 dry lubricant. But you need to have these on hand, spray on, and then wipe off any of the excess of both steps, starting with the solvent and then going on to the dry lubricant once you've got that excess solvent wiped away. Important note when it comes to this collar that actually holds your router in place onto the lift is that it takes an 8mm hex wrench. The actual kit comes with 4, so I'm not sure why they didn't include an 8mm to actually tighten the actual router in place. But anyway, just make sure you have one. I know most of the smaller kits only go up to 6mm. That was my case. It was a second trip to the hardware store to actually grab a different hex set or hex wrench set. Now I'm working on getting the dust collection box put together. Important note that the dust collection box and the router lift do not come in the kit that I bought. The only thing that came in the kit was the router table itself, the legs, the fence, and the power switch. I did have to buy the intermediary cast wing, the dust collection box, and the router lift separately.